You know, the story of artificial intelligence, it's not some straight shot to the future. Not at all. It's actually this wild cycle of massive dreams, then these crushing failures, and now, this recent explosive comeback that is literally reshaping our world. So we're going to dive into that whole journey. We want to understand not just how we got here, but, where this whole revolution is taking us.
All right, so let's start our story. And we're not starting in some modern, sterile tech lab. Nope. We're going back to a truly dazzling vision of the future, the 1964 New York World's Fair. And you have to understand this wasn't just some event. It was a massive statement about what we as humans thought we could achieve.
And that was absolutely the mood there. Just this feeling that human ingenuity had zero limits. I mean, think about it. If we were dreaming up holiday resorts in space or these incredible underwater cities, then why not a thinking machine, right? Technology was the star of the show, no question. And the biggest dream of all? Creating intelligence itself. So, right in the middle of all this huge spectacle, there was this quiet little marvel. Over at the IBM Pavilion, they were showing off a machine that could do something only humans could do, read handwriting. It was this tangible, kind of mesmerizing glimpse of a machine that could, actually perceive something. It was a small step for sure, but man, was it a profound one. But this dream didn't just pop up at the fair. Oh no, the foundations were laid way earlier, decades before. You had things like ENIAC, this absolute beast of a machine, a 30-ton colossus the press called the giant brain. It proved we could compute on a massive scale. Then you had the brilliant Alan Turing, who was just obsessed with that question of what makes living things different from machines. And maybe most importantly, Claude Shannon showed how simple on-off switches could actually perform logical reasoning. The hardware, the big ideas, the philosophy, it was all starting to come together. So with all these powerful new ideas swirling around, the ambition for AI just went through the roof. But as it so often goes, the hype started to run way, way ahead of what was actually possible. And that set the stage for a pretty long period of disillusionment. And man, nothing captured that hype better than this robot called Shaky. It was developed at Stanford, and it just completely grabbed the public's imagination. I mean, Life magazine, they didn't just call it a machine, they called it the first electronic person. Just let that sink in for a second. Not a tool, a person. And this right here. This just perfectly shows you the huge gap between what people were thinking and what was real. On one side, you've got the promise, a robot that's ready to go to the moon. And on the other side, the reality, a super important but really fragile research project that was basically stuck in a lab. This kind of over-the-top promise is exactly what fueled that first big AI bubble. So while the engineers are busy building this stuff, the philosophers are starting to ask some really tough questions. You've got John Searle and his famous Chinese room argument, which was a huge challenge to the whole idea of AI. So imagine this. You're locked in a room. You don't know a single word of Chinese. People slide questions written in Chinese under the door. But you have this giant rule book that tells you exactly which Chinese symbols to send back out. So to the person outside, it totally looks like you're fluent, right? But do you understand Chinese? Searle's answer was a big no. You're just manipulating symbols. You're following rules. There's no real comprehension. And this raised a massive question. Was AI just a really, really clever parrot? So you've got this 1-2 punch, right? First, these wildly unmet expectations. Then, these deep philosophical doubts about what thinking even means for a machine. And that combo had very real consequences. The money just dried up, research ground to a halt, and that huge, grand vision of creating a human-like intelligence, it got put on ice. The first AI winter was here. Okay, so after that big freeze, AI basically had to reinvent itself just to survive. That huge philosophical quest for a giant brain, that was out. It was replaced by something way more practical, more humble. The new mission was, let's solve smaller, really specific problems. Let's prove that this technology is actually a useful tool. One small win at a time. And AI found its footing in a couple of key places. First, video games. You didn't need some self-aware AI to make a good video game enemy, right? You just needed a behavior that was believable and challenging. And then you had these things called expert systems. The idea here was to create powerful assistants for professionals, tools that were just packed with deep knowledge in one specific field. And this was really the era of what we now call good old-fashioned AI, or GoFi. Look, these systems weren't trying to be human. Not at all. They were just solving real-world business problems. You had the dipmater advisor helping geologists find oil. You had other systems helping farmers plan their crops. It was practical, it was useful, and it was all built on rules that humans had to painstakingly program into it. But here's the thing, that very success, that complete reliance on human-programmed rules, it also showed a huge limitation. Yeah, these systems were powerful, but they were also brittle. They could only do what they were explicitly told to do. And this led to a question, a really tantalizing question that would kick off the next and, honestly, the most dramatic revolution in this entire story. What if a machine didn't need us to feed it all the rules? What if it could just learn on its own? And this is the moment everything changed. The old way of doing things was about to be completely shattered. The era of good old-fashioned AI was over, and a brand new era, the one we are all living in right now, was about to begin. The era where machines started to teach themselves. And the proving ground for this new idea? A classic Atari game, Breakout. An AI from DeepMind was set up to play it. But here's the catch. It was given zero instructions, no rules, no strategy guide, nothing. It only had two things to work with, the raw pixels on the screen and one simple goal: make that score go up. And watching this thing learn is it's mind-blowing. At first, it's awful. It's just missing the ball all the time. Then, after maybe 200 games, it gets pretty good, a totally competent player. But then, something amazing happens. It discovers a strategy all by itself. This tunneling trick where it sends the ball behind the bricks, a strategy that expert human players use. It literally went from being a total amateur to a master and then to superhuman. And it did it all without a single lesson from a person. So this was a complete 180, a total flip of the old AI paradigm. We went from systems that could only follow the rules we gave them to systems that could learn from raw experience, from data, and come up with their own strategies. And honestly, those strategies were often way better than ours. This right here, this is the engine that's driving the crazy AI boom we're all living through right now. And that brings us right up to today. The result of this long, winding, complicated journey has landed us in a totally new world. A world that's filled with intelligent machines that are forcing us to ask some of the deepest, most profound questions we've ever had to face. Yeah, it's the big question, isn't it? The one on everybody's mind. But the real answer is so much more complicated and honestly way more surprising than just worrying about robots on an assembly line. The first fear was all about manual labor jobs. But the reality? It's hitting way differently. We are talking about high-skill, knowledge-based jobs. Think about it. The kind of document review that junior lawyers used to do, that's being automated. In medicine, you've got AI systems that can diagnose some diseases better than human doctors. And then there's this, which sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. A venture capital firm in Hong Kong literally appointed an AI to its board of directors to help make investment decisions. And this example just perfectly lays out the new ethical minefield we're all walking through. For the first time in history, we're not just programming tasks into a machine. We are being forced to program morality into them. So the self-driving car is about to crash. Who does it save? You, the occupant? Or does it swerve and hit a group of pedestrians? There's no easy answer. But someone, a programmer somewhere, has to write that code. They have to embed a moral choice into millions and millions of cars. So from the big spectacle of that 1964 World's Fair all the way to the self-learning code we have today, this whole quest for AI, it's always been a kind of mirror. It reflects our own deep desire to understand what it even means to be intelligent. We started this whole thing by building machines to answer our questions. The real journey ahead, the one that's just beginning, well, that's going to be defined by what happens when they start asking questions of their own.